You're listening to Chamber Chat on Chamber Channel 3. Chamber Chat is brought to you in part by Mansmith Pharmacy, where your care is our only concern.
This is Chamber Chat, brought to you by Mansmith Pharmacy, and I'm Deb Height. Today we're visiting with Eric Hanson, the Chief of Police for Emmitsburg, and welcome, Eric. Nice to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, what precipitated our call to Eric to have him come today is we've been receiving a number of scams here, both on the internet and reports from individuals that they're getting them on the phone. So let's talk about scams today and how people can protect themselves.
Well, first I would say for the Emmitsburg Police Department and the City of Emmitsburg, it's not a new occurrence. We've been seeing an increase in these type of phone calls or scams really over the last 3 years. But probably they've really been increased over the last 2 years to a year and a half. What we're seeing in Emmitsburg is, lately we've had several instances where a household will get a call and the caller identifies themselves as either a granddaughter or grandson, that they're in trouble, that they're in jail, they're in a holding cell, and they need a specific amount of money in order to get released. And they don't give a lot of specific information about who they are, but they will say that, well, this is your favorite grandson, or this is your oldest grandson or oldest granddaughter, and they let the person that's receiving the call, sometimes they might call them by name and say, well, is this John? And say, well, yeah, this is John. And so it tries to make the call more personal, and then they get some information, they tell them about how much money they need, and unfortunately, it sounds authentic, it sounds real, and then these grandparents are left with this dilemma of what to do. And we have had a couple instances here within Emmitsburg where those grandparents have gotten in the car to try to make their way to a facility that can wire money. Mm-hmm. But fortunately, they get thinking about it, that it just doesn't seem right, and so they make some phone calls to family members to assure the validity of the call and see if the grandson or granddaughter is actually in trouble or where they might be. And of course, they always find out that person in trouble is fine and is safe somewhere. So the callers are trying to take advantage of that vulnerability.
Yes, and as a grandparent, there'd be nothing that tug at your heart more than having
absolutely.
your grandchild call you and say they're in trouble.
Sure, because
I could relate to that easily.
They sound distressed. They sound under pressure and emotional. Mm-hmm. So those all tug at your heart, wanting to do whatever you can. Other ones that we've had, we worked with Wells Fargo Bank, because we were having people in town that were getting phone calls saying that we have just suspended your debit or your credit card because there was some activity that didn't seem right. So we're calling to let you know that, and then to verify this, we need to get some personal information from you. Of course. So we would like to get a date of birth, we'd like to get a social security number, and if you can just give us a quick bank account number, we'll verify that, and then we'll get your account back going again. So that one really is a hard one for people too, especially that if they bank at Wells Fargo. Now, a couple of our calls in town, they did not bank at Wells Fargo. They happened to bank somewhere else, so they would start questioning this person and the caller and saying, well, I don't have any accounts at Wells Fargo. And then all of a sudden the phone would go dead and they'd hang up. And then they'll move on to somebody else, hoping that they do their banking there. And then under this premise that something fraudulent has happened with their account, and they wish to get this other personal information. So Wells Fargo and our branch here in Emmitsburg was a big help in working with those and getting that advised out to the public. We also had, because we're a Mid-American customer, we had some calls to people here in Emmitsburg about Mid-American, that they had been selected for either a $100 or $1,000 gift card.
Oh, that's tempting.
Because them being a Mid-American customer. So, but they had to provide a certain amount of information in order to be able to get that card and have it sent to them. And so then they would attempt to get, again, more personal information, whether that's account numbers or just personal identifications that they maybe then can use at a later date to get a credit card or some other type of credit set up with that person's identification, all in an attempt to get money.
Well, you know, if people would work that hard to get an honest job, wouldn't it be nice? Some people put a lot of effort into being dishonest and try to trick people. You know, you were talking about Wells Fargo here at the Chamber. We had one that came through on the internet. Same thing from Wells Fargo, claiming that we had a Wells Fargo account, and nothing against Wells Fargo, but we don't have one here. Yeah. And so automatically I knew that was the case. But there's other internet scams, I'm sure, too, that you see.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing, just a little bit more with Wells Fargo, obviously they target main and prominent banks.
Sure.
Because here in Emmitsburg, those callers, they wouldn't be advised or know of Iowa Trust and Savings or Lorenz State Bank. So they target a well-known, well-established, and a large financial institution that could carry and cover a large area rather than specifically looking through the phone book here for Emmitsburg to see what other banks. Right. So they specifically target those larger institutions.
Well, you would think, too, that like Wells Fargo, being that it is based in larger cities, that you wouldn't know who you were talking to. You know, maybe at our local banks, Iowa Trust, you know, they don't have another branch, so you know all the people at Iowa Trust. You would know those people when they call, but it would be easy to be tricked, you know, because you wouldn't expect to talk to know every Wells Fargo representative.
Exactly. And the caller sounds legitimate. They're very friendly. They want to be very helpful. And chances are you're not going to hear a lot of other callers in the background, because we're all familiar with telemarketers, and we all know that when we pick up that phone call and say hello and we start talking to that caller, chances are you can hear all the other callers in the background, but these don't sound. They sound like you're just talking one-on-one with somebody in an office, and it's all part of their plan to make it sound legitimate, for you to let your defenses down, let your guard down, and feel that it's legitimate. Other things we've been experiencing here in Emmitsburg is we have had people called saying that they owe a debt, that they are being called by a collection service, and that this collection service has been assigned to collect this debt, and they may say that the debt is $1,200, but in order for you to get this squared away, we're only going to require a portion of that money. But you need to get that money sent to this address or to this point of contact within so much time, or you're going to be obligated to pay the full amount, and you could face any kind of criminal charges should you fail to do that.
Boy, I haven't heard of that one yet.
So they prey on that. They prey on people's vulnerability and worrying that they're going to get in trouble, that they're going to be in trouble with the law. Or these callers will say, if you do not take these steps to remedy this debt, we are going to report it to the Emmitsburg Police Department.
Oh, so they involve you too.
Absolutely. And then they say that we're going to be investigating, it's going to be turned over to the police department, and they're going to be then the ones to investigate and potentially look at a criminal charge. And obviously when we get any of those calls like that, we absolutely encourage the people to tell that caller, absolutely, call the Emmitsburg Police Department. Call to it, report it to them, even get the FBI involved, and encourage them to do that. Challenge them to follow through with that. A lot of times they'll hang up the phone and they'll disconnect the call. Or I have had people that have come to the police department with a phone number that they have given them to say, you need to call us back at this number to get these arrangements set up. And they'll come to the police department, and then we'll attempt to make that phone call and say, we're at the Emmitsburg Police Department. We have so-and-so here with me. We're here at the police department. Let's take the information. And click.
Click.
And then they hang up on us. Wow. So we try to challenge that. Let's see, what else we've had with here in town. Of course, the scams that we've seen a few years ago involved Craigslist and eBay. Somebody would wish to sell a certain piece of equipment or a car or a vehicle, and somebody would contact them saying that they were interested in that item, and then that they would be sending payment within a few days. And sure enough, in a few days, a letter would arrive in the mail, and there'd be a check in that envelope, and the check would be of such an inflated amount. So for example, if you were selling a lawnmower and you wanted $250 for it, you might receive a check in the mail for over $3,000.
Oh my goodness.
And they'll tell you just to please take the check to your bank, have them cash that, keep the $250 or even $300 for your troubles, and then you just need to get us the rest of the amount of money back and send that back to them, and they try to give you a link or an address to be able to forward the money to. Now, every one of those that we know about, those all occur overseas. They do not occur within the continental United States. They're all overseas. But we have had it. We've had people that have tried to take those types of checks up to the bank to cash. And fortunately, with our banks here in Emmitsburg, with all the banks, that they are well informed and well versed on these types of scams. So they work with that customer to verify the validity of the check. And we have never had a check that's been ever come back that's valid. They've all been duplicated, replicated checks that people have made up to appear to be a valid check. But again, thankfully through our bank, they're very diligent in watching out for their customers to making sure these types of things don't happen.
So the important thing is to take that check to the bank first.
Absolutely.
And see if it'll go through before you
Yeah.
take any kind of action, if you were
But-
even questioning if it was good.
Really, my advice with that is doesn't even have to get to that point, because if you receive a check for just the amount of money that you're asking for, then chances are it's valid. But when there's such an inflated price, they're trying to get back that remainder, that amount of money, and that's what they feel that's where they're trying to make. That's through the scam.
Sure.
And obviously anybody, it's too bad because the internet is such a wonderful tool and a wonderful resource, but the people out there that are willing to take advantage of it, it's tremendous, and it's growing day by day.
It is.
And we're only limited, those people are only limited by their imagination on what they can come up with next to try to either get personal information from people, again, date of birth, dates of birth, or social security numbers, any kind of personal information that they could use to their advantage at a later time. Or that they're trying to get you in such a state of mind that you're willing to send them amount of money, again, either to keep yourself out of trouble or to help somebody else. There's no conscience. Those people have no remorse about what they're doing. It's all for an amount of money.
Well, that's sad. Last week we had an email here at the chamber, and it was a queen had been her father, or had been not. It wasn't a queen actually. It was a daughter of a king. Let's put it that way. And her father had passed away and left her $25 million, and she just needed somebody help in spending it. I was like, what person wouldn't like to have their inheritance? You know, it was like from a foreign country again. So
Yep.
delete. And when you get those, you never know if you should pass them on or not. But I think.
And those, when those first started appearing, we would forward on the letters and any correspondence that those callers had to the recipient. We would forward those down to the FBI office in Omaha or through our Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation. And those are what were being called the Nigerian or the Nigeria scams. And again, reporting that you'd either won an amount of money or that they had this excess amount of money, and you were picked to be a part of receiving that. But obviously you have taxes to pay and you have handling fees to pay. So in order for you to receive your windfall, we need to get this amount of money from you to complete the transactions. And thankfully, I think through media and through word of mouth, that those have really been taken care of. And now we go to, so we don't see so many now through the mail, but they're all through the phones. More through the phones. And again, still some through emails and internet, but thankfully with spam filters and our internet providers starting to be more diligent on with the blocking software and that they have in place, that a lot of that's filtered before it even gets to your email address. But the phone is a different matter. Well, as long as we have landline phones are usually the first ones to be hit, because you can go on white pages, you can get a phone book, and They scan through a phone book. Sometimes they look for a single name. Unfortunately, sometimes they look for a lady that has an elderly lady. Not that they know they're elderly, but if they're just their single name in a phone book, maybe they might surmise that maybe they're a widow, and they try to take advantage of that. The greatest thing that we see that we encourage everybody to have within their home and with their landline phones, and of course we do have the availability with our cell phones, but that's for the caller ID.
That's right.
And that is, as that phone is ringing, that just rather than running over and picking it up, you look at the caller ID, you look at the name or the service that comes across the top, you look at that phone number, and if you don't recognize an area code or have really any information that it could be a family member in that area code or that area, obviously we encourage people not to answer those calls. That if you have, and most people now have answer machines along with those types of phones, let the answer machine pick it up. If it's a legitimate call, they'll leave a message, they'll leave a name or a phone number for you to call. Otherwise, there's just going to be a dial tone on the answer machine or that they've hung up. And if that's the case, then that was not a call really to worry about taking.
It wasn't important at all.
Right, exactly.
Yep, we get a lot of those at home, and fortunately we do have caller ID, so you don't have to pick up the phone 6 times a night, 6 times an evening, And lots of them, it's interesting where the cities are that are reported, where they come from. It's like you have no idea of anybody who lives at that place,
And we have anything with phones. We have been seeing where there's been what's called an 809 scam. And that's trying to get you to call this number back at this 809 area code. Well, and what we're finding out is that 809 area code is in the Caribbean. It's for the Dominican Republic. And to us, it looks legit. It doesn't look like it's an international call. It looks to be a United States call. So you call this 809 number back, and you may get some information, but you're being charged $25 per minute.
Oh, my.
So the longer if you're on that phone call with that area code, you can be charged, and you can see your telephone bill come back and have a $25 per minute charge.
Wow.
And it's not now, it's not just exclusive to 809. Now there's several other area codes within the Caribbean that those come up, that they still look like a 3-digit area code for the United States, but they're actually out of the United States. And that's what they're trying to do, is to get the inflated price per minute. The longer they can keep you on the phone, and then that charge comes back to them.
Oh, it comes back to them.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what's the scam in that? I thought maybe the telephone company was getting the $25 a minute, but obviously not.
No, because you're calling that 809, it's then being credited back. So you're getting charged by the phone company, but they're taking that and then forwarding that on to whoever was charging that $25 per minute.
That's a new one I haven't heard of yet either.
And that, like I said, they're only limited by their imagination. As
That's
people continue to get wise to some scams, there's 10 more that are being thought up, and unfortunately that we all face as we have phones. And I'm sure sometime in the future we're going to see that we're going to have cell phone books.
I'm sure.
You're going to be able to get a book that has everybody's cell phones. So there's not going to be a phone that either our cell phone is going to be sacred or our landline phones to be able to have some anonymity so people can't just randomly find you. We still very much encourage people to go on the internet and go to the Do Not Call website and register your phone, continue to register your landline phone, and continue to register your cell phones for the Do Not Call list.
Is it the same number for both phones, or is it a different number for landline phone from cell phone?
No, you just go to the Do Not Call website,
okay,
and they're going to ask you to input the phone that you wish to have registered on their Do Not Call list. So that's the opportunity to re-put in your landline phone or to put in your cell phone, whether it continues to be the same number or you've changed providers and maybe changed cell phone numbers, because those are increasing. I myself have received the telemarketer or to some degree political contacts, especially during this campaign year, and they come to your cell phone.
That's right.
And the first thing you're thinking is, how did they get my cell phone number? A lot of times you'll find that somebody making those calls just finds out that like for myself, my phone is obviously 712 area code, but 298. But they don't know any of the last 4 digits. So they'll get 298, and then they'll just start randomly dialing digits under the 298 and to come into our area. And that's some of what we saw with the Mid-American too, was that they were calling 298 phone numbers.
Interesting.
So
wow, there's so many ways for people out there.
It is, and it's too bad
that
we have to have our guard up like that. But we are in an age and a time that there's unscrupulous people out there, and again with no conscience, and they will say and do whatever they wish to do, anything to try to get information from you or to get you in a state to where you're willing to pay out an amount of money.
Well, that's all very interesting. Is there anything you want to add here at the end?
Just, again, any instances, we welcome any report from the public. So even if it's things we've talked about in the past, we still appreciate the calls from the public, letting us know what's out there, letting us know what new type of scam is being generated, because that's all information to us. And then just like the 298 number, the more people we had call in, and in putting the information together, we could see that they were all 298 exchanges. So then we had some information to give back to them, saying, well, it looks like you were picked at random, but you were picked because you have a 298 cell phone number. So it's that ironic. And then those people feel a little bit of relief that they weren't such a specific target, but they were targeted because of their phone number, and that would generally lead itself to what area you live in, and that you may be a Mid-American customer or a Wells Fargo customer within that geographic area. And so it made them feel a little bit better, but again, we have to continually keep up our guard and be aware of people soliciting information from us.
Now, when they call in, they should not call on the 911 number. No, you would want them to call in on the 852-2424 number, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. And that phone number is answered 24 hours a day.
Yes.
So we answer it through our police department during the hours of 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Any calls after hours are answered by the dispatcher at the Palo Alto County Communications Center. So we welcome those calls any time of the day or night. And our dispatchers after hours will document those calls, document the information that caller provides, and then depending on that information, or if the caller wishes to have a contact back from an officer, then we'll call them back, get a little bit more information, and then depending on how many calls or the frequency of these calls that are happening within our area, then we'll get with our local media, our local newspaper, radio stations, and then get that information out so they can get it out to the public and more people are aware of it.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for being here today. You have a wealth of information. I have a feeling we could have gone on and talked about this for quite some time.
Yeah. No, you're welcome, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We want to thank you for joining us, and if it sounds like it's too good to be true, make sure that you check it out. And if you do know of any scams, be sure to call the police department at 852-2424. This has been Chamber Chat, brought to you by Mansmith's Pharmacy, where your care is their only concern. Thank you for joining us.
This has been Chamber Chat on Chamber Channel 3. Chamber Chat has been brought to you by Mansmith Pharmacy.